organizer of a monthly meetup, Accessibility Virtual Reality. And we typically have been meeting in Mozilla Hubs, but this is our first time for our event hosting inside of the AltspaceVR world. I'm a huge fan of AltspaceVR. This is the social VR platform I actually use the most. And we are very excited, obviously, about the captioning feature that is going to be discussed tonight. It's something very exciting and, you know, best in class for things for other VR properties to learn from. We want to thank tonight our sponsors from Equal Entry. And we also want to thank Jolie McPhee from the Internet Society of New York, who does our live streams on YouTube and make sure that we have recordings of all of our great presentations. And I want to thank Mirror by Night from White Coat Captioning for the captioning for today's presentation. And one other thing I would like to do is just take a moment to have Laurel van Fossen come down from Educators in VR and introduce herself. My very first experience meeting and presenting in AltspaceVR was at Laurel's conference, Educators in VR. So really thrilled that she's here tonight with us, and I wanted to let her have a chance to tell you about what her event and her organization does.
Oh, I appreciate that. Did not expect it. And it's lovely to see all our Educators in VR members out there. Come on, give me some hearts. You know, I love that. Educators in VR was founded here in AltspaceVR almost 3 years ago, and is now grown to be over 4,000 members who are educators, researchers, students, trainers, businesses, etc., that are determined, we're evangelizing and determined to integrate XR technology into education at every level. And we have training programs that we offer regularly and very, very active Discord. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
I have terrible internet. So the fact that I'm here is always a miracle. So we just finished a great discussion on Discord Stage, which is the equivalent of the new Clubhouse live chat, which needs some serious accessibility features on both Discord and Clubhouse, on what can you not teach in VR, which was a fascinating discussion. And we put it on YouTube, which luckily has automagical captions, so you can follow through on that. But we're just really glad to support everything that you all are doing. And we have been working with Educators in VR has been working with AltSpace and other platforms from day one to encourage accessibility. And I'm so excited about this topic because captions are great. Then we need to take it up, because what's next is making sure we have the visually impaired can get in here. That's my dream. But thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And do you want to let everyone know that is joining us on the YouTube stream? We do monitor the YouTube stream for your comments and questions for our presenter tonight. So please feel free. There's a slight time delay, obviously, on YouTube, but we will be monitoring those and bringing them into the world. And without further ado, I would like to hand it over to our presenter tonight, Evan Tice from Microsoft and the AltspaceVR team and this great captioning feature. So take it away, Evan.
Thanks so much. Let me get situated here, and then going to tilt my headset. That's good enough. You can all see me, right? I keep standing on top of the microphone. That's embarrassing. Hey, there we go. That's good. Now we're going to tilt the headset up so I can look at my slide notes, and I can still see all of you. Magic of technology. Hi, folks. I'm Evan Tice. Thrilled to be here today and talking to you about captions in AltSpace and beyond. Just to give you a brief overview, I'm going to give you an introduction of myself and my background and how I came to work on captions. I'm going to introduce myself two ways. We'll get to that. We're going to talk about captions in AltSpace, and I'm going to do this both from a feature overview like talking about what we built. And then I'm going to teach you all to code and show you how easy it is to make caption software for yourself. I'm only half joking. We won't go too deeply into code. At the end, I'm happy to take questions and discuss captions and accessibility in general. One thing I will note, I am not a Microsoft spokesperson, and I'm super thankful for Microsoft support in giving me this talk, but I won't be announcing anything today. So just a heads up on that. And with that, I will introduce myself. So I learned to program on a Radio Shack TRS-80, which is very old even for the time. I went to high school in Montana, and I studied computer science at Dartmouth, graduating in 2009. I finished college in the middle of the recession and was very, very happy to get a job at Microsoft. I started my career fighting hackers working on Windows. I worked a bit on bolstering security of the Windows heap. If anyone knows what that is, send me some emojis or hearts right now. Seeing none. Yes, I'm a super nerd. The Windows heap is the thing that gives applications memory, and it's a frequent target of hackers. I also worked a bit on a dynamic defect detection tool, which is a nerdy way of saying I worked on a program that finds security and reliability bugs in other programs. I'll pause and mention here that mixed reality was not an obvious career move for me, but I eventually decided that I wanted to build things and not break things, and breaking things is a lot of what security engineering is all about. And I'll save my story about joining the mixed reality team for the end of this talk. It's a good way to conclude, but I made the leap to a secret project in 2014, which turned out to be HoloLens. I worked on persistence for HoloLens, so that's if you put an object on the wall, say Netflix on the wall, or if you put a model, an engineering model on a table, and you come back the next day, that model or that Netflix screen should be in the same place in your house or in your office, in spite of any changes in lighting. Maybe you've moved a small amount of furniture around. That was my contribution to HoloLens V1. And right after that, oh goodness, I forgot to advance the slides. Right after that, I worked on articulated hands for HoloLens V2. And this is where my journey into accessibility in XR really began. So can I get a show of emojis from anyone that's ever used a HoloLens V1? A handful of you, that's great. The input and interaction model for HoloLens V1 was state of the art at the time. It was called gaze, gesture, voice. It basically meant you pointed your head at the thing you wanted to click at, and you made this awkward clicking gesture on the screen. And in HoloLens V2, this was my feature, we added articulated hand support. As the technology evolved over time, we could do individual joint tracking, and you could do much more natural interactions. You could reach out and grab an object and manipulate it with your hands. In this slide, the user is actually interacting from afar. You can do that as well, but it was a much more natural progression. After that, actually, I should mention that all throughout this time, I was on loan to the AltspaceVR team occasionally and periodically. I'm responsible for most of the Unity upgrades that the AltspaceVR team has done. Apologies, content creators. I know you hate those. And on one of those times when I was on loan to the AltspaceVR team doing the Unity 2019 port, I did captions as a bit of a side project. We'll talk more about captions in just a second. I joined the team full-time in November of 2020, and that's me and my journey to AltspaceVR in a nutshell. But I want to introduce myself another way and talk to you a bit about how I experience XR. I'm admittedly not particularly neurodiverse. I wear glasses, and they drive me freaking crazy. I'm wearing contacts now. My boss actually messaged me on Teams. He's like, I've never seen you without glasses. And I'm like, well, I'm giving this talk, and I want to be able to wave my hands around, so it would be nice if I wore one of these fancy headsets I have through work, but I don't want to scratch my glasses. And aside from my vision issues, I probably experience XR in a way that isn't particularly remarkable. Why am I telling you all this? And why am I giving this talk about accessibility in XR? The obvious answer is I'm obviously part of the team that built the captions implementation in AltspaceVR. I'm super proud of that. And we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of how this feature works. I'm sure I'll hear your feedback on how it could be better. But more than that, I'm in a soapbox for a second. And jokes on you, Thomas and company. Thank you so much for inviting me. But it's very likely I will learn more for this talk from the discussion that follows this talk than you learn from me. I'm really thrilled to be here. I titled this talk Captions and Beyond because we are going to talk about captions. We're going to talk about some cool cognitive services that make apps more immersive and accessible. And I have a handful of small ideas on that topic, on the Beyond topic in particular. But I'm really looking forward to the conversation at the end of this talk. This audience is likely more experienced and well-versed in accessibility and is likely to help me learn things. And I think that will make me a better engineer, and I think that will make the products I work on more accessible. So thanks again, Meryl and Thomas, for having me. Let's see. One other thing before we dig into captions. I went to the Kai conference in Montreal in 2018, and I think it's the thing that lit the interest in accessibility, set it off for me. I'm just going to play this video. It's a short video, but it was personally inspiring for me. And I will say, before I saw this talk and some of the others that were presented at Kai this year, I hadn't really thought about pushing the boundaries of accessibility in XR. And I want to credit the authors of this paper and this research for their inspiration. I think they set the bar high. I think we have a long way to go, and we'll talk more about that throughout this talk. If I can play this video.
We created a novel VR experience by using haptic and audio feedback to enable people with visual impairments to experience the virtual world. Our novel haptic controller simulates the interaction of a white cane to help people who are blind understand and navigate a virtual space using their existing orientation and mobility skills.
I found the domes at the traffic light. I found the pole with the traffic light button.
All right, that's it. So Kai 2018. I said a few slides ago, and I'll say again, I am not the accessibility expert. I happen to build this really cool feature, and I'm happy to talk about it, and I'm super psyched to learn from you and see where we go beyond that. So let's talk briefly about Altspace, particularly for those of you not in Altspace out on the live stream. You're missing out. Come join us if you'd like. Altspace is a social VR application primarily designed for events. Events can mean everything from a virtual Burning Man to an LGBTQ meetup, educators in VR, or a holoportation concert. Haley Gregg is giving a concert in Altspace tomorrow at 7 p.m. Pacific. Attend if you can. Holoportation is really cool. And if you can't attend, we also demoed holoportation at our Ignite conference in March. We had holograms of James Cameron along with a giant squid. You can find videos of that on the internet. Altspace is a great piece of technology to bring people together, even when we're social distancing. Thanks, COVID. We shipped captions during the captions preview. We shipped it during the pandemic. And I'm really proud of this because we can bring folks together across language barriers. We can allow folks who have difficulty speaking and hearing to participate in Altspace. And we did so at a time that these interactions were sorely lacking in our personal lives for most of us because of pandemic and lockdown. Yeah. So I'm proud of this feature that we built. Let's talk a bit about it. So we have live captions powered by Microsoft Azure. My speech is being sent to Azure and being sent back to all of you as text, and we'll talk about how specifically that works. Captions in Altspace can be enabled in select events. You'll notice if you ask a question later on in this event, or if you were talking prior to the event, that in order for you to speak in this space, either via audio or text input, you must accept the captions consent prompt, because this space is caption enabled. And you can stay muted if you want. Captions are lazily initialized. That means if none of you had shown up for this event today, and I was in here and talking alone to myself, the captions feature wouldn't turn on. It's waiting around for an audience member who wants to see captions before we actually light up the captions feature. That's just a basic cost mitigation. Captions are currently translated into 8 languages: English, German, Spanish, French, Italian, Japanese, Korean, and Portuguese. We present captions in 2 different ways. There's the presenter captions that you're looking at right now. Those can be viewed from afar. They have my name on them. There are initial take at a more traditional speaker style or presentation style closed captioning. And then there's also the speech bubble, the social captions feature that you'll have when we finish up this event and everyone's mingling around and talking amongst themselves. There's a speech bubble that's attached to the player's head, and you can read it. For some, it's easier to read than others, admittedly so, but that's our social caption viewing mode. And there's rudimentary text input on PC. We'll talk more about this in a second. I have a slide or 2 on it. And there's also the option to speak and view captions in different languages. So that's the feature as a whole. And I'm realizing as I'm looking at my slide now that I actually have in the picture, I have a picture of the social captions. Those are those speech bubbles I was talking about. All right, rudimentary text input. I have to press enter to enable this, and I got a little box that shows up into which I've typed hello captions. And when I hit enter or click send, on the audience members side, we have a perspective of a Spanish caption viewer in the audience. And whereas I typed hello captions, they see hola subtítulos. This feature is admittedly limited. It's only available on 2D PC right now. And due to a weird quirk I won't delve into too much, it still requires you to unmute your microphone in order to type. The other captions feature I want to talk about is our settings. I mentioned earlier that you can view and speak in different languages. That's not the default. You have to flip that little slider that says view captions in another language. And when that appears, you get a second language selector, in this case, set to German. You can also adjust the size of the caption text box. All right. Here's an architecture diagram, and Laurel told me my slides are impossible to see, so I'm going to describe this for you. Client 1 sends audio data to the Microsoft Speech Service in Azure. And the speech service sends back captions text. We're going to deep dive into the speech SDK in just a moment, but it's the area of this diagram in green. After the client gets the caption text back, it sends it to our back end, where it is sent out to other players. That's the current implementation. And let's deep dive into that green caption or speech SDK part. So the Cognitive Services Platform is a comprehensive set of Microsoft technologies and services that's aimed to accelerate incorporation of speech into applications, as well as to amplify like the impact of those applications. This is a set of technology that wasn't necessarily developed with virtual reality or augmented reality, XR, in mind, but I think it has a lot more to offer us than we're using it for today. Again, the title of my talk, Captions and Beyond. So this software stack was typically used for scenarios like call centers. Call centers really like transcription and translation. Also, more recently, voice assistants. No one wants to touch an elevator during COVID. Wouldn't it be great to say, take me to the 5th floor? We use two of the core capabilities of the Azure Speech SDK. We use speech to text and speech translation, and we'll dig into each of those in a moment. Yes, I promise I will teach you to code. It won't be too painful. The platform enables us as applications developers to do a lot more. I am really impressed as I was researching my talk and the capabilities of the Azure Speech Service, particularly in the areas of custom keyword creation. You can create a keyword like Hey Cortana that lights up the speech service and starts listening. And they also support things like custom commands. That's like run the vacuum or open the menu, that sort of stuff. I'm super impressed with this speech text technology, and I'd like to demo you some of the features we're not using in AltspaceVR.
Oh, well, that's quite a change from California to Utah.
No, don't play.
Heavy snow
Don't play yet. Didn't get the other video to start when I hit the slide, but this one did. This is the voice gallery within Speech Studio. You can play around with this at speech.microsoft.com without writing any code. One of the things that particularly struck me is how the affect of voices can be adjusted. These things sound more human-like over time. I'm going to play two clips for you, one conversational and one is the voice of a newscaster. So this is text to speech in two different styles. First conversational and then a newscaster.
Oh, well, that's quite a change from California to Utah. Heavy snow and strong winds hammered parts of the central U.S. on Thursday.
And those are just the built-in ones. If you're so inclined, you can build your own custom or neural voices and make them even more expressive and emotive. So lots of untapped potential in the Speech SDK. All right, who's ready to learn to code? Actually, one or two more slides. There is several processes at play in speech translation. One is capturing conversion of the speech into text, and the other is the translation of that text into the desired language. In the caption and conversion stage, so this is the part where the application captures audio, sends it to Azure. We run automatic speech recognition in Azure, and it performs an initial conversion. That initial conversion is just words without context, and that initial conversion, that automatic speech recognition, is refined using true text. True text uses text matching patterns. Microsoft Research has a few papers on true text, but suffice it to say that the transcript is refined over time. This true text stage is where we might correct or disambiguate between two words. Think H-E-R-E here versus H-E-A-R here. Can you hear me? The true text is where we imply our learnings about language and further refine that recognition. In the translation stage, so now we've got text, it's been refined. The text is routed to another machine learning model that's been trained with up to 60 languages, and we get partial and final translations. We'll talk more about these partial translations in a moment. If an application is using it, the text-to-speech system can also convert the translated text back into speech audio, like we demoed a few slides ago. And obviously, AltspaceVR isn't doing this today. All right, now comes the code. So I'm going to give an example of transcription without translation, but we'll add translation in a few slides. And my goal in the code is less important here. The annotations I put on the code are more important. My goal here is to convince you all that adding captions is really relatively straightforward. So the first thing you do is you take in some sort of speech configuration. This includes the input language setting that that the speaker is speaking. In my case, United States English, as well as a credential from whomever is paying the bill. And then 2 lines of code initialize a speech recognizer from an audio source. An audio source could be a microphone, a sound file, some other source. And then we wait around for a single phrase to be recognized. And in this demo, we print it out to the console. We'll talk about continuously recognizing a phrase and multiple phrases in just a moment. But first, let's define a phrase. I gave that example Can you hear me? I've carried it over here as well. You can think of a phrase similar to a sentence, but in reality, it might be multiple sentences. If you're noticing, sometimes my captions overflow off the screen. That's generally because Altspace itself doesn't really understand sentences. It understands phrases from the speech SDK. As the phrase builds up, the true text technology refines the estimate that it's getting using its understanding of human language. So in this example here, we get 4 updates before the phrase is finalized. Can you hear, spelled incorrectly, and can you hear me? And on the Altspace side, when we're getting this text back to save bandwidth, and because some of these phrases can get quite lengthy, and because we're doing this in multiple languages, we try to only send the difference between the previous phrase and the current phrase. So that's what that right column is about. Okay, more code. If we want to speak more than one phrase, we can wire up some callbacks. Our previous demo wasn't that useful because it just could only recognize a single phrase. So as the user speaks, the recognizing callback fires repeatedly. And when the phrase is done, the recognized callback fires. And there's also callbacks for the session being canceled or stopped that can also fire. Okay. Translation doesn't change much. We create a translation configuration with credentials and settings, much like we did just for simple English transcription. And we specify a source language. For nerds in the audience, this is the BCP47, which is a standard for identifying human languages. You can look it up on Wikipedia. But the important thing to note is that for the speaker, we include a region. A US English speaker might get better text recognition out of a US English model versus the UK English model. And that's why we do that for the speaker. And then for translation languages, we specify 8 in Altspace. I named them off earlier. And for these, we simply denote the language. The text a reader in Britain is looking at and the text a reader in the United States is looking at, that's going to be the same for both of them. And if you're playing around with your settings and you turned on that view captions in another language, you'll notice that there are many, many, many more options differentiating different types of English and Spanish and whatnot for the speaker and not for the viewer. And that's why that is. So yeah, we create an audio source and a recognizer the same way that we did before. And the events that we looked at, those recognizing and recognized events, the canceled events, they fire just like they did for pure English translation. The only difference for the nerds in the audience, we get a dictionary back as opposed to just a string. So we have this mapping between the language code and the actual text in that language. All right. It's going to be hard to see. I apologize. I downloaded this sample from the Microsoft Speech SDK samples on GitHub. This is very, very similar to the code I just showed you and the code that we have in Altspace. But I want you to pay attention to something if you can see it, and if not, I will blow it up for you. Pay attention to the phrase changing over time. Here we go. The captain has turned on the seatbelt sign in preparation for our descent into the Seattle area. I'll play it again. Did you catch the change? The captain has turned on the seatbelt sign in preparation for our descent into the Seattle area. Okay, so about halfway through that recognition, it ended a sentence and it started a new one. The captain has turned on the seatbelt, period. Sign in is the first part of that second sentence. This is all one phrase, by the way, so it's a little weird. Maybe it didn't have confidence that the phrase was actually ended. But as I kept speaking and as it got more context and ran through these models that have been trained, it figured it out. The captain has turned on the seatbelt sign in preparation for our descent into the Seattle area. I'm not looking in VR to see if it captioned it as I said it correctly, but you get the idea. I'll play it one more time. The captain has turned on the seatbelt sign in preparation for our descent into the Seattle area. I'd encourage everyone who does have some engineering skills or interest or wants to learn, take what I've taught you today. You're now coding experts. Go download the Cognitive Services Speech SDK, and you too can experience captions. That's just about it.
Evan, quick question on that last part.
Yeah.
Thomas here. So is the for the continuous recognition, is that a different API call, or is that just the default that it does that kind of
Can you repeat the question once more?
For the continuous recognition, or where it does the recognition kind of after it's processed more of the text, is that on by default, or are those different API calls for like?
Yeah, it's a different API call. There was I forget what it was called, but it was the one I showed originally. That's just like capture a single phrase. But it's a related API call where you can wire up the recognizer and the recognizing. It's a sibling to that API, if you will.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. I have some ideas about what could make XR more accessible, from readability to support for more language, to improve text input for those unable to speak. But I want to leave you all with a thought. And I want to spend the portion of our Q&A talking about the future. Before we do that, I want to look back to the past. When I joined the HoloLens team in 2004, we were just a codename project. It was actually interesting. It felt like, for those of you that have seen the movie Matrix, the Matrix, it felt very much like the take the red pill or take the blue pill and see how far the rabbit hole goes. That quote from the Matrix. They didn't really tell me I'd be working on HoloLens. I had an idea that the project was going to be awesome. And around that time, when I was interviewing with this team and trying to decide, do I really want to leave security, the hiring manager described what we were doing in a way that really stuck with me. He talked about when the mouse became widely available in the 80s and even into the 90s, we didn't quite know how to write software for it. Here's Microsoft Word 6.0. I had a blast installing this today in a VM. It was kind of a pain to get it running again. And I couldn't find later versions of Word that had the menus within menus within menus. But I always remember using software as a kid. We had the mouse. We didn't really know how to build UI for it. Misclicking out of a menu was a pain. Misclicking out of a nested menu was an even bigger pain. And we had the mouse and we knew it was going to be amazing, but it took a while. Similarly, for HoloLens, we had this paradigm, this gaze, gesture, voice paradigm. It felt so amazing at the time, but it was nothing compared to articulated hands. And I think about that often, that it took many years to design intuitive UI. You can say what you want about the ribbon in Microsoft Word, but I find it much more accessible and easy to understand and approachable than searching for something in a menu. And similarly, I think we've improved on gaze, gesture, voice with what we've did with articulated hands in HoloLens. And now, so with accessibility in VR, I think we're really at the Microsoft Word 6.0 stage and the gaze, gesture, voice stage today. I'm really looking forward to hearing your ideas for the future and having a discussion about what we build next. But yeah, my big takeaway is we're at the vanguard of something new and exciting here. I want to acknowledge some folks before I open up for questions. Meryl and Thomas, thank you so much for having me. Jolie, for your help with the stream. Laurel, for jumping in and helping moderate at the last minute. I want to really thank the team that built a captions prototype for a hackathon that ultimately evolved into what we have in Altspace today. That's a project probably a talk for another day. The Altspace team, I see a lot of you in the audience right now. Thank you for attending, and thank you so much for helping me troubleshoot random caption and projection issues the last few days. I'm really excited about what we build next. I love working with you. You inspire me every single day. I want to thank the Azure Speech team for your help on building captions as well as on this talk. And last, but certainly not least, I want to thank each of you for attending. And with that, I'm super happy to open it up for a discussion. And I'm going to put my headset on properly because it's starting to hurt and look at all of your beautiful faces.
Great. And hello, everyone. This is Thomas again from A11yVR. We're going to take a couple questions from the YouTube stream first because we do have people that aren't with us here in the world. We're going to ask their questions and we'll take your questions here. And then if you are also here on the stream, please continue typing questions. We're excited to get a lot of questions. And thank you so much to Evan tonight. I thought this was like very inspiring talk and I really appreciated you were showing concrete code examples and we can try out.
Yeah.
So first comment for you, this is just more of a comment, but Makoto Ueki-san may be in here, but he was using the Japanese translation feature tonight for your presentation or for him in the morning in Tokyo, and he said the translation was working very well in Japanese. Makoto, are you in the room? If so, you can give your comment directly. Not seeing.
Oh, I would love to call on someone who is speaking one of our 8 languages that I don't speak, and have everyone be able to see that. That'd be cool.
Okay. Well, Makoto, if you are here, give us an emoji and we'll pull you up to show that off. But I thought that was a great comment and happy to hear that. Second, we have a question for you from Deb Myers on the YouTube stream. How is the speech SDK with people who have speech impairments such as stuttering, thick accents, etc.?
I would encourage you to try it and let me know. My guess is improving over time. I think we as an industry have realized that when we train machine learning algorithms, if we only train them with people who look like us or sound like us, they're only going to work well for people like who look and sound like us. So try it. Let us know. If it's not great, send us the feedback, and it gets better over time.
Cool. And I'm trying to flex some recent knowledge from Evan and Laurel on using the host panel here in AltSpace tonight, but I have just turned on the raise hand feature in my host tools. And if you would like to ask a question or a comment, if you will do the hand raise, and then I will call on you. So first person calling on is Laurel.
Hello. I have a bunch of questions, but I'll keep them specific and scattered. First of all, you talked about some of the training. One of the problems that we have from the very beginning is that AltSpace comes out as Old Spice and variations thereof. Is work being done to in the training process for those things better for brand names and Old Spice?
That's a really hilarious bug. One thing I'll say, so we don't send AltSpace data for the purposes of training right now. We would consider doing that, but we'd probably have to allow users to opt in. So I'm not surprised to hear that the name of our product maybe isn't transcribed correctly. I will look into that. Someone should shoot me a bug or a feedback. I think it's altvr.com/support. And I will look into that because that's funny.
We sent it in. And then really quick, I want to talk, could you talk about the two-way translation? Because I think that's going to be the biggest game changer, is that I can speak in my language and it's translated into theirs, and they can speak in their language and it's translated into mine.
It's actually 8-way translation at any given moment. So you can test this out right now by just going into the settings panel and changing your language preference. the words I'm speaking in English are being sent to all of you in 8 different languages. The two-way feature I think you're talking about is the ability to view captions in a different language. That's just a choice we made in the UI, because I think it would be really hard to perhaps see your speech in more than 2 languages, or to see it in more than one language. But yeah, I envision folks being able to use that. Maybe they're trying to learn a new language. Maybe they're proficient in a language, or maybe they're not proficient in a language. Maybe they're talking in English, but they're more comfortable speaking in German, and they want to see how their speech is being translated. It's probably not the most common use case. I'll admit, during this talk, I've kept my captions on English the entire time, but there are those that you suspect will get value out of it. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. And I see in AltSpace, when it's ready to grow up and come and join us with the captions, because I cannot wait for that moment of having that choice of a language set upon installation, so that people who come into AltSpace, they land in the info zone or the campfire, wherever else, can immediately have answers to their questions, and they can immediately connect with people that are around them in their language, not just, we don't speak Italian, can't help, the problems we've had supporting that. I love this. Thank you.
I hear you.
All right. Thank you so much. And I'm going to take a couple more questions from YouTube, but for those of you all here in the room with us in AltSpace, please use the raise hand feature, and we will be calling on you next after we handle a few more on YouTube. So Evan, we have a question from Wendy Daniels. Do you know what the word error rate is for your project?
I don't. I have no idea. I will say, I spent a lot of time developing this feature, reading the Gettysburg Address, just over and over and over again, and tuning how captions appear, and when we break and when we don't, or when we break up phrases and when we don't. I found that with certain types of text, it seems to work better than others. Laurel just mentioned the name of our product is not always properly transcribed. I've noticed with other words, in mixed reality, we're sort of a niche. We're not, as I said, the primary use case for translation, and some of our technical jargon and phrases doesn't translate as well as the Gettysburg Address. But I have no idea about the error rate.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Jocelyn Gonzalez. How has AltSpace managed to add all these deep speech models without creating lag? Doesn't it make the app significantly larger?
It does not. I think, don't quote me on this. Actually, I probably shouldn't say that. I was going to say, I think the fonts themselves for the languages that we display, particularly like the Korean language, and some of the other Asian languages, those files are very, very, very large. But the actual models don't live on your device. They live in Azure. So we don't. We need the binaries that know how to interact with the Azure service, and we need the fonts, the character atlases. That's the bulk of the file size, and then all of the compute happens in the cloud.
Great, thank you. All right, last question we'll take from YouTube, and then we'll come back to YouTube, and we'll do some more questions here in AltSpace. But last one from YouTube for right now, from Sima Space. Do you have any people? Why not?
I lost your audio cut out until the end of the question.
Do you have any deaf people on your team? If not, why not?
On my immediate team, I do not have any deaf folks. We do have colleagues within Microsoft and our broader organization that are deaf. And why not? I would love to have more deaf folks on our team. And yeah, careers.microsoft.com. Tag AltspaceVR.
Cool. All right, I'm going to go back now. Chris Turner, I'm going to turn on your on-air and megaphone. I think that'll put your microphone on. So if you'd like to ask your question.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks. And it's great that you guys are doing this. My hat's off to you. And I like the idea around beyond, because when we think about the many different types of disabilities, from vision, hearing, motor dexterity, cognition, mental health, speech, there's lots of opportunities. A few that I was wondering about is, maybe if someone had a reading disability or something, the ability to click on a button and actually speak a message, or speak maybe a menu or an event menu or something like that. And I have many other suggestions and ideas around different disabilities. I was wondering if there's a place where we could submit some of our ideas so that they could get to you guys for a review.
Please do submit a ticket on altvr.com.
Okay.
Not all VR.
Standard ticket. Then.
AltVR. Yeah. I'll check tomorrow, because I keep telling people to put things in there, and I'll collect any feedback that's submitted.
All right. Yeah, I took a class recently from Hector Mento. He's on the accessibility team at Microsoft, and really opened my eyes. The class is called Digital Accessibility for the Modern Workplace. It's on LinkedIn Learning. And, there's really a lot of things we need to think about when we're creating content, whether in the workplace or outside of the workplace, and how that content might be interpreted by those that have, different preferences or different needs. And I think we all need to build towards that so that we're inclusive.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you again.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
All right. Next, we've got Kurt, VR Dude 18. I'm going to give you the megaphone.
Hello. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we
can. So are you going to have text-to-speech in Altspace in the future, where people can come in and through 2D or whatever do a translation for people that can't speak and whatnot?
I would love to have text-to-speech. I can't make any product announcements today.
Okay. The other thing was, I'd like to see it in World, where if we put a pop messages in our worlds, that a pop-up message could be translated to that local language for that person coming in that has a setting for a different language. It'd be nice to have a translation. Yep. Okay.
Great.
Please do submit a ticket. All of these ideas. I can't
All right.
take notes
And
and wear a
next
headset
we're going to
at the
call on.
No problem.
We're going to call on Makoto Ueki, who will be speaking Japanese and using the language feature here live in the room. So let me turn on Makoto. Let's see. May need Laurel or Evan's help with this. I'm not sure. It doesn't look like I'm able to enable that.
There we go. Why can't I do it? Oh, because they're not in the room.
Yes, they just left. Sorry.
All right. Well, Laurel, thank you. Next question.
Yeah, we're all clicking it. When you had your videos, the videos were not being captioned in Altspace, so it wasn't working. And is there, because it's tied to our microphones, right? How do we take that next step other than to caption all of our videos manually, or bring in somehow captioned in the web projector or whatever? How do we pick up those sounds that are not truly mic based for captions?
Brilliant question. That is an absolutely awesome question. I mean, we clearly have the technology to send audio off to be captioned. just in a different place than the web projector stack. Send me that as a bug as well.
You got it.
I'm excited to see that. I'll +1 that if I can +1 that. All right, Makoto-san, here we go. I think you're live.
皆さん、こんにちは。おはようございます。聞こえますか？私は日本の東京にいます。そして日本語を話しています。皆さんの画面で私の日本語が英語に翻訳されているかどうか、あるいは皆さんのご自分の言語に翻訳されているかどうか、ぜひこの機会に確かめてみてください。
I see your text. Your Japanese text was translated into English. You just sent goosebumps down my my back because I've never done that with a Japanese speaker before. Wow, this is what this is all about, folks.
そして今、あなたは英語を話していますが、私には日本語に翻訳された字幕が画面に見えます。画面で見えています。今日は面白い話を聞かせてくれて、本当にありがとうございました。
Well, thank you.
どうもありがとう。
Wow. That was a very good demo. Hopefully that's captured on the stream as well, because that's a very good translation. Okay, I'm going to take another question here from YouTube, and everyone here in the room, if you'd like to comment or question, please click the hand raise feature. We have a question, Evan, from Rebecca Evans. What are AltSpace's plans for localizing web-based tools and also in-app menu items?
Great question. I can't make product announcements today. I'd encourage you to keep those accessibility bugs flowing. I hear you.
All right. So now we're going to go back into AltSpace room. Keely Chic Chick, I'm giving you the megaphone.
Hello. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Hello.
Awesome. I have goosebumps from that. Thank you, Makoto, for doing that. It was a good experience. This is more like a feature request. When you are a presenter and you're speaking, I can see the text, but there's no like gray box behind it. So it's kind of difficult for me to read it if it's not behind a solid background. So if that could be added on the list of to-dos, that'd be much appreciated.
Please send it in. I've heard this one from Meryl and others before. The more feedback we get, the better. Once again, I hear you.
Thank you.
I picked this darker room rather than the outdoor space with that in mind.
All right, Laurel.
Sorry, I'm crying right now. I don't know about the rest of you. I have been fighting with web browsers to make translation and captioning and whatnot be accessible for decades. And to actually see this, when it was first announced like 5-6 years ago that AltSpace had that, that's when I chose AltSpace to be where I wanted to be, and to just witness what I just did with the translation. Thank you so much from my heart and everyone else in the world. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and I completely agree. It's like it's like such an exciting feature, and it's something that we've never seen, and it's really exciting to see it in this environment. And yeah, that was awesome. So echo that. Thank you. Fleet
Thank you,
admin Graham 9753. Should be unmuted now.
Yeah. So I was wondering if you could talk about like some of the technical challenges. For me, I've used this with some people before who have who are very comfortable with 2 or 3 languages, and they've told me that it's been a little bit hard for them to use sometimes because in order for it to properly translate, like let's say from French to English, you'd have to stay locked into speaking French, and they're more used to when it comes to talking to someone who's monolingual, kind of jumping between the two languages. Is that possible to allow for, or is there some technical challenge that makes it so you have to stick to one language and speak it very fluently and clearly for it to be translated?
I am not a Azure or even much of a machine learning expert, but I can guarantee you that we've heard this feedback before, and I'm sure the folks in the Speech SDK team have heard this as well. I would imagine that training a larger model that is capable of doing like cross-language would be more difficult, require more compute. But if we've learned anything, and if the spirit of my talk is really like we need to keep pushing boundaries. So I'm with you. I'd love to live in a world where, I mean, you saw the slide. We have to tell the Speech SDK today what language we're speaking. Who knows what speech recognition technology a year, 5, 10 years from now will do. I'm not privy to any of the Speech SDK team's plans, but I'm sure they've heard that feedback as well. And
all right,
you
and
mentioned technical challenges. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah,
I can comment on that. Going into this, I knew nothing about font atlases, so that was an interesting learning journey. Doing those in Unity was challenging. I don't think I'm an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but we pulled it off. The other thing that was challenging, strangely, was bandwidth. And you don't think about it for text, but these large phrases over time in 8 languages, it can build up. And if you play around with this feature when you're not megaphoned, one of the things you'll notice is that when you walk further and further away from a user and their speech bubble suddenly disappears or eventually disappears, and you stop hearing them, you'll also stop seeing their captions. And in fact, around the time we stopped sending the audio, we also stopped sending the caption data. That was challenging as well, but kind of a fun problem.
Cool. And Evan, I'm going to take a moment just to steal a quick question about, I was curious for like the SDK calls that you were showing. Is there any kind of plugin or adapter for like Zoom, or if someone wanted to get similar functionality, how hard is it to use the SDK? Like, is there any kind of helper functions, or would you, if you wanted to, for example, use this with Zoom, need to write your own code?
I have never written a Zoom plugin. Does anyone know how extensible Zoom is or what their SDK looks like? We can leave that as a rhetorical question. I'm gonna tilt my headset back up and go back to the Cognitive Services website I have open in another tab. And I will, in just a moment, I can read off the language projections that they have. But it's more than just C# and Unity. Let's see. Azure Speech SDK. Maybe while I search for that, we should take another.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Let me put in some.
C#, C++, Go, JavaScript, Objective-C, and Swift, and Python. And that's just from docs.microsoft.com. But awesome. Yeah, they have language projections and engine projections for quite a few things. So I don't know about Zoom specifically, but getting started in Unity C# was certainly not hard.
Awesome, thank you. And we will also be posting links to resources you highlighted in your talk on our meetup page at meetup.com/ALIVR, and we'll be doing recaps on our blog at equal entry. I'm going to read a few more things here from YouTube. We have from Patrick Donnelly, appreciation. I love how the live translation gives an appreciation for syntactic differences between languages. And then a question, which might be another secret one, but from Leon Guo, question, any plans for Chinese translation?
Would love to do Chinese translation. Can't make any product announcements today. Wish I could. I'm going to give a shout out back to Patrick. Patrick is actually my husband and studies speech and hearing and the reading brain. So appreciate that feedback as well. I don't know that he's actually seen this feature ever before. So thanks for joining, Patrick.
That's cool. All right, from Jolie McPhee, our Internet Society of New York streamer. He says, Captions was a beta feature. Is it now live?
We're still calling it a beta. Oh, sorry, your audio cut out. I didn't mean to step on you. We're still calling it a beta. You might have noticed that it's appearing in more events than it used to, and that's a good thing, and I hope that continues. One for those of you that are on Mac, you've probably realized that Captions is not working. I'd be hesitant to remove the beta label until we're, at parity across all of our platforms.
Cool. And then we have a comment, which I believe they can send to your support link, but switching captions from large to small and vice versa did nothing for someone's had that feedback. Is there any extra guidance on how they submit feedback or that particular
Please
issue?
file a ticket on altvr.com/support. I will personally make sure that our feedback gets collated. I'll probably look tomorrow morning.
Cool.
I don't want to call her out, but somewhere in the audience, one of my coworkers who's also passionate about accessibility is hanging out. Actually, I see a bunch of coworkers. Thank you all for coming.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Good.
Yay. All right. I'm going to take two more questions here on YouTube, and we're getting close to the end here for our stream, but obviously, as long as anyone's available to hang out in the space afterwards, it's fine. We have a question still on the YouTube stream from Miles DeBastian. I heard that Altspace was going to support hand tracking, such as Facebook, Oculus Quest. Can you comment as to this, because it would allow deaf people like myself to converse in our native sign language?
I have also heard that folks are using VR chat to sign. So understand the ask. I wish I could agree to implement all of these features and roll them out tomorrow. Party line is I can't talk about anything in development at the moment, but I do hear you. I'd love to be able to do it.
So, all right, and then from Rebecca Evans, she said, "Thank you for your response. This feature is incredible. I was lucky to have it enabled by special request for an Altspace event, and everyone was amazed. Wonderful way to practice learning languages."
Yeah, so thank you for that. The view captions in another language, we actually thought learning a language might be a primary scenario for that feature. So I'm glad you're using Altspace to learn. I'm guessing you're probably using that view in a second language feature. Thanks for trying it out, and thanks for the feedback.
All right, everyone. Well, I really appreciate it. We want to thank you all for coming to the event. We're going to be now sort of just letting you know that, again, this is Thomas Logan from the Accessibility Virtual Reality Meetup. We do meet once a month. We usually meet in Mozilla Hubs, but we've met out tonight in AltspaceVR. We've met in Engage VR. So sometimes we change the locations. We really appreciate such an awesome set of attendees tonight, both in the room and on YouTube. And, it's thanks to Evan Tice with his excellent presentation today. So we are, as we've always said, going to make sure that the recording of this presentation and the different assets that were referenced, those will be available to you. This presentation will be something you can come back to. And thank you for all the emojis, Evan. We really appreciate your presentation tonight. I want to end with saying thank you again to the Internet Society of New York, Jolie McPhee, who always makes sure that we get our events streamed on YouTube and recorded and available for anyone to view in the past. I want to thank you. I'm very excited tonight that we have Barbie Greenwater from Lotus Sign. So if you were watching our YouTube stream, we have started at some of our events at A11yVR and Accessibility New York City having American Sign Language interpretation at our events upon request. So we're very excited to have that on the Zoom call. I didn't really say this at the beginning of our call, but we are always in VR wanting to learn best practices and make more improvements. So, we want to have the sign language interpretation also in the virtual space, and we want to have our human captioner, Mirror by Night, from White Coat Captioning, who if you're watching the live stream, will be having her captions provided. We are always working in these spaces to advance it. We are an open book in the sense that if you send us feedback, we'll communicate with people like Evan at Altspace on your behalf or people at Mozilla Hubs. We are always trying to make sure that our events are as inclusive as possible. And that's another reason that we appreciate being able to have the YouTube stream as well for people that may not have a headset or cannot join for example, in Altspace at the time. Our next event will be coming up in July, so please check out our website, meetup.com/A11yVR. And looking forward to hanging out with you all in the space and getting to know you all better here in Altspace. And thank you so much for coming tonight. And thank you again to Evan.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to let people talk again.